exactly. So I guess I'll do some brief introduction to this, and for the purposes of people who might be listening in on YouTube, and I'll briefly introduce the two people that are, with me today to talk, Leah and Himika. So this was, this is part of my project for KILL LAB and FORKING PIRAGENE at KILL LAB, entitled Exomio Fragmission. And the project is sort of an exploration of genetics, genetic variations, genetic determinism, and sort of the representations of this in radiophonic space, and sort of exploring how does one think about representations of transness? How can one think about sort of problematics of genetic determinism, let's say, especially with identities such as transgender or homosexual or something like that? What does it mean to be looking for these things within sort of genetic codes? And after a conversation that I had with someone yesterday, Dr. Wang, who researches in genetics and genetic variants in particular, I have some sort of new ideas about maybe the deep tying of genetic histories, and not only genetic histories, but social histories that might be in our genes. So that's something that I'll bring up today in our conversation. So let me just read briefly sort of the description for this session today, which is called Body as Trans Data. So the Exomio Fragmissions project perturbs the tension of the body as information. This is going to be a discussion with other transgender non-binary people about the entanglements between biomolecular hormonal jouissance, searches for bioinformatic markers of transgender identity, juridical orderings of trans being, and semiotic performances. So how can our visceral trans or non-binary experiences inform a more nuanced understanding of identity process? How can we deeply understand the complicated pleasure of molecular ingestion alongside our semiotic performative capabilities? And in a world that is simultaneously more fluid and more rigid, how can these experiences manifest a trajectory that swerves elsewhere into an in-between state? And so, like I said before, this will also incorporate some of the explorations that I've done so far with the Exomio Fragmissions project, which I was, of course, hoping to be there at KILL LAB and in person, but the virus had other plans. So I'm currently in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Currently right now I'm at the Kersnikova Institute as an artist in residence here. And so joining me today here is Leah Ahmad. I'm sorry, I still can't pronounce your name properly, Leah. Who is also joining me in Ljubljana, but in a different part of Ljubljana, I believe, at the Transactia offices. And Leah is an activist, filmmaker, camera operator, many faceted person who works with Transactia together on issues of different things having to do with trans and non-binary rights and support and navigation through different types of systems in Slovenia. And then also joining us is Himika, who is in Taiwan, who is a programmer and also activist, LGBTQ activist, free software activist, and so forth. And so that's my own brief introduction, and I just want to let the two of you maybe give a little bit more details about your background and so forth. So I'll maybe turn it over to you, Leah. Oh. Yeah.
So you were asking me about the background.
Yeah, just give a brief introduction of yourself and anything that I missed or that you want to go into more detail about.
Well, I didn't hear everything you said because the connection was a little unstable. From what I heard, so you present quite exhaustingly who I am and what I'm doing. It's I mean, basically, I'm just I'm a trans woman who is activist. I think that this is what defined me the most. and I like to play with pictures.
Indeed, wonderful. It looks like we lost Cat, and now she's back. Yes.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We now have a frozen version of you and one of you in motion. Okay. So yeah, would you mind just briefly saying a little bit more about yourself and sort of what you do in Taiwan?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Yuke from Taiwan, and I'm currently a senior web developer that build websites for schools, and also I'm an NGO activator since a long time, and I mainly focus on eliminating the gender gap. Sorry, I speak slower. Eliminating the gender gap between in the science and technology area, especially in IT. So I started first, and so I started women in FOS in free and open source software in Taiwan in 2010. In 2010, it's exactly 10 years ago. And then 3 years later, I founded the PILadies Taiwan, a local branch of the global PILadies. And also I co-founded a room of Wiki Women's Own. That is Wiki Women Taiwan, a women's community a women's Wikimedia community. Yeah. So mostly I focus. I figure out that mostly I'm doing. It's kind of a lab, you know, just putting in a group of girls and see what will happen. And previously, most in the IT area, it's like engineering, so it's mainly dominated by males. So women find it very hard to feel belong. So I tried to create labs, create a greenhouse, and try to put them together and see what will happen. If there might be some new culture or something that may be generated from this lab. Yeah, then the result is quite interesting. And also for transgender, I've been from 2015 to 2017. While I was working in a college, I tried to go to the swim pool and use the girls' changing room, and then I got a lot of complaints. And then I filed some complaints to the faculty. And after 2 faculty in 2 years, it's a very painful process, but actually I won the right to use the girls' changing room in the swim pool. And there's even a poster telling others that this changing room is friendly to the transgender women. Yes, that's what I was doing.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I can only imagine sort of the challenges of doing that, because I certainly feel, not welcome in those spaces, and that's one reason why I don't go to the gym at all, or sauna, things like that, even though I love to go into those spaces. And so, I mean, that's I think that's something that sort of obviously is a similarity for all of us, is these challenges of being in spaces and sort of creating the space for ourselves. And so, I mean, Leah, I was wondering if you could talk maybe a little bit about TransTube, and maybe a little bit more of what Transaxia does, sort of talk about the ways in which you've been doing that within Slovenia.
Sorry again, please. So you're Leah, okay? Sorry. Okay.
Sorry, there's something weird going on with my mic and everything. Maybe I'll just have to hold it close here. I don't know if this is any better. This is better?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just hold it up. I'll just hold it up close when I'm speaking. Did you understand that, Leia, what I was going to ask?
Yeah, I understood. So yeah, what I can say about Transaxia is that this is the place where I'm working, the only trans or specific organization in Slovenia. We are trying to, we are providing some help and some counseling for trans people in the region. But we are mainly working on we are a big part of our work. It is the systemic work with the society, with the ministries, in order to move forward different kind of problem like legal gender recognition or medical transition for trans people in Slovenia, which is very inaccessible at the moment. So yeah, this is basically like the Transaxia is doing all what needs to be done on that topic in Slovenia. And TransTube in that context, it's the way how I saw I could bring something to the table, to the activist and educational fight, and it's just a YouTube channel, and it's just I created it when I decided to follow the work, the events of Transaxia, and together different kind of LGBT topic related in Slovenian language in one channel, and I also try to make tools like video tools. One important video on intersex people that I had the opportunity to do when they came here to visit in Ljubljana. And now this cartoon we made for education purpose about trans and gender non-conforming people. So this is like the frame. This is my framework somehow. I mean that. And so I think the main challenge with TransTube is actually to bring to crush the centralized part of the counseling that is happening usually in some countries where there's a lot of usually you will find in big towns a lot of information, people out of there. It's hard in Slovenia. It's very accurate. It's exactly like that, and it's so strong that I think everything that is moving online is somehow bringing it forward to the people and to make it more accessible, inclusive, because well, some people just cannot come to some events, just physically cannot have they don't have the possibility, or it's not safe for them. And I mean, yeah, the reflection about the online tools have this year, especially in COVID situation, it's everything. I guess I can say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that. That's sort of why I wanted to bring you and Emacat together, because I think there's some interesting resonances there in terms of this organizing online and sort of like, you know, I'm curious in terms of, you know, thinking about how does one sort of create the conditions for both a sort of discussion amongst, say, transgender people, and sort of like I don't want to necessarily use the word safe space, but sort of like a safe space for people to be able to express sort of concerns or desires or thoughts and everything like that, but then also combining it with the need to also have some public advocacy, right? It's sort of that phrase that visibility is a trap, right? That you get kind of caught in this thing where you are now visible, but then you're also more vulnerable as a result. And so I'm wondering if either of you wanted to talk a little bit about that, because let me give you an example. I just found something yesterday that I find really kind of amusing. So I ended up giving a remote talk over the summer to the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And I was invited by their LGBTQ group to give this talk during Pride Month in June, right? And so I talked about some of my projects, sending my hormone replacement medications to space and so forth. And this is a talk that was open to everyone at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And so I gave the talk. There was a bunch of people in the talk, really well turned out, good comments and everything like that. So yesterday, I'm searching for something online with my name because I need to find something about what I'm doing. And so I Google search to find out what my schedule is sometimes. And so I found this website that was written by, it's called the American Conservative. And evidently, there was actually a lot of problems within JPL about my talk, and a lot of concerns about wokeness, right? And oh my God, look at this waste of money about sending hormones to space, and oh my God, we don't have like big strong men anymore going to space, you know? And it was just this whole stream of emails of sent to the author of this article about, oh, well, yeah, you know, I really didn't like this. And and I'm like, wow, you're getting that riled up about me having one talk, you know? And I'm sure but all of us have some experiences of this, right? And so I'm thinking about this in terms of this desire for visibility, this need for visibility to let people know that it's, you know, obviously it's okay to be us, right? But also the complications of it. So I don't know if Emakat or Leah wanted to talk a little bit about that or your experiences in that respect.
Sorry, experience to what?
Or your experiences in that respect, or with you know, with regards to that sort of challenge of visibility and sort of the complications of it, but also the need for visibility.
Actually, yeah, the situation is rather complicated because sometimes I feel it's what I'm trying to figure out is the concept of the boundary of women. The concept of boundary of women, because it defines what we can do or what we can't. It defines where we can go, if we can go to the toilet, if we can go to the gym, and we can go to yoga, or if we can go to swim, or we can't. So once I've been into the women's workshop in Mexico, and that is a very friendly workshop, and people there are all very friendly, and they treat me like ordinary women, but at some point I still got some people asking. One of the women asked a question about, now she said, that's what she said. She said, I think we should figure out what we are talking about women. We should define clearly about women, or we don't know what we are talking about women. And I think that still start making me feel anxious, because I don't know what she will try to do to define women. And even if even if the staff tell her that we don't have a clear definition of women, we don't have a global definition about women, but she keeps trying to request for clear definition on women, and that's why I'm wondering. That's why I'm thinking about that. When the problem is sometimes the problem lies at the point that the transgender women are not treated as women. Some people they don't see transgender women as women. For example, the issue of J.K. Rowling, that she tried to figure out what do you mean by a human being with period. Yeah. So I think if it is possible that we can through some action or we can try to redefine the concept of women and try to redefine the concept of women, try to discuss, review, and redefine the concept of women, and maybe we can help more of a transgender women and even transgender men to live life what they are, but not, to live life what they are. That was what I'm thinking about.
Leah?
Okay.
I think you maybe have probably some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when we're speaking about visibility, I think first of all of the visibility of trans people in media, the visibility of trans people in literature, in the culture, at least like the Occidental culture. And this has been a very unfortunate visibility that we had. I must say that that's by definition the way how you shape stereotype about minority. You know, it's you took the space up, talk in their name about them, and include them in some narrative that are completely distant from their realities. And then I think that the visibility that we have is in especially the visibility in media, it shows a very double message. On one hand, let's accept trans people, but on the other hand, there's some trans people that we will accept better than other, because all of this acceptance is still based on the ideology of gender and sex being limited to male and female. And like by this, it's just excluding the complete existence of trans people from there. So the visibility is not an end by itself. It's a mean. It's a way to take space to educate and to change mentalities, because there's a lot of work to do on that field.
Yeah, exactly. And I think having that, it's like this tricky situation, right? Where in a sense there's a need to be oftentimes seen as one or the other in order to be seen legally, right? And that legal recognition allows for all sorts of freedom in the lowercase f, you know, in the sense of movement around sort of the environment, you know, not getting maybe harassed as much at the border, and, you know, being able to change your name and so forth, right? But on the other hand, in order to get that recognition, then we are erasing sometimes the differences, right? The the in between, the non-binary, you know.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of that's for me, that's a really strong tension, right? On the one hand, I'm glad that I have all of my identity documents that say F on it, right? You know,
yes.
But on the other hand, it erases a lot of things about me, right? And I think that's sort of that tension. Yeah.
Yes, may I share some more about visibility? Then for me, I have some experience around that make visibility very political. Since when I first when I go to the Singapore at 2015 at the first time, and at the first couple of days it was fine, but then they come to me, they say that they got a lot of complaints, and they haven't seen any, and they feel very sorry for me because they haven't seen any transgender went to swim before. You see, they haven't seen any. I don't believe that there's no transgender in the college. The problem is that they don't see them in the same pool. So they are not aware of the problem. And then after I successfully get a poster in front of the girl changing room saying that the transgender women has the right to use the changing room as ordinary woman. And then when they start posting it, I think, well, that's fine, but at that time I got hurt in the leg, in the knee, so I cannot go to swim, so I have to rest for about 2 months because I have to go to Mexico and back, and I rest for 2 months. And after I came back from the Mexico, I went to a swim pool, and then I found that poster is removed. And I got very angry because that by law they have to post that poster there, and they cannot remove it. So I argue with them, and they say, oh, okay, we will put it back. And then I found something that swimming for me become very political. That means that if I stop swimming, that poster will be removed. Yeah, that's why I say if we stop being visible, transgender, if we stop being visible, we will be nowhere to go. People will stop seeing us. Yes, so that's why I say visibility is very political. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely, and it comes with these risks here, right, which we all know, right? And I mean, I think that's again, that's the trap, right? In a sense, yes. we have to, but it's super risky, you know. Speaking of sort of trans representation in the media, and sort of a situation where it's not risky at all. I think, Leah, you've already heard me talk about this series that I've watched called Another Life, or some is it Another Life after? Yeah, Another Life. It's a Netflix series, and there's a non-binary character in it, and
yes.
they have, you know, they use they them theirs as their pronouns. They have a relationship with a cis guy, but no one says anything about it. There's no questions about how tortured their background was, all of the challenges they had. There's no sort of like, you know, saying, oh, how do we relate to this? You know, that person, they just live their life and on a spaceship and have lots of sex, you know? And it's like, wow, wouldn't that be nice, right? That's science fiction. It's not the fact that they're trying to get to another star. It's the fact that this non-binary person gets to just live their life, you know?
Yes.
I mean, it's not a very good show plot-wise and everything, but just for that point, I love it.
Yeah, there's a big debate about the narration in some serial and big production, especially film that include transgender characters or thematic, I mean characters especially, and then the question of the representation, you know, like who you choose in order to put that person, and how did you choose your story about trans. It tells everything, and it makes all the difference about visibility that will just reproduce the stereotypes and the already a lot of just reinforce a lot of concepts, transphobic concept. But on the other hand, representation can be also very, very positive, and we see it with Netflix, we see it with a lot of serial recent like Pose, like I don't know if you watch also Her Story or a Fantastic Woman, and it's all this production have in common this, that trans people are doing the thing. They are making the movie. They are the scenarist. They are the director. They are the actor. It changed everything. If you compare that to a story about transgender, like, for instance, the portrait of a young lady. How is that? The Danish Girl. The Danish Girl, for instance, if you take it, it's very transphobic. It's reinforced a lot of very binary system, a very pathologization of trans people. It links the gender identity to the very strongly to the sexual orientation, and it makes all these talking about trans people and being so-called inclusive and you know, representation. But if you go to see the cast, the main actor is a cis guy, and what you do is that you use actually the definition of trans people, and you put a cis person in for representing that, and it makes the catastrophic sub-message in I think anyone can feel it. It gives the message that trans women especially are men, are naturally, essentially, biologically, put whatever you want, men, and that there's then a process of, you know, an artificial process that we make this person another gender. I mean, the other gender, because of course there's only two genders, like as we know. So I think that all the narrative, when trans people take space to speak about their life and speak about love, work, but just like usual things, just not talking about transness. I think that this is really when we will see more of this product, we will know we are already in a society that is considering trans people and trans narrative as something that is completely normal.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking of this other film. Like, I was having this conversation a few weeks ago about films. I totally forgot about this one, but I'm remembering it now. It's this independent film from Argentina that I saw at a queer film festival called Brief Story from the Green Planet. I'll put this in the chat for the two of you and Julie to see. Basically it's from Argentina, and the story is that this trans woman and her two friends have to go take the trans woman's grandma to the place where she met aliens. So the grandma has died, but they're taking the alien, so this alien came down to Earth befriended the trans woman's grandma. The trans woman's grandma died. The alien needs to now go back up to the spaceship. So the trans woman and her friends take the alien in a suitcase to the place where the alien was found, and then the trans woman goes with the alien because she's probably like, screw this, I'm out of here. But it was like, especially for my projects where I have this sort of thing about aliens in space, it was just like, wow. But I think it also speaks a lot to this, you know. It was just sort of like a road trip movie, you know, with an alien, you know. But you know, it had sort of just this normality to it, right? But then this twist, which also makes it be really sort of close, a little bit maybe closer to some of the alienness or inhospitability sometimes. You might feel, right? I was thinking, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, Imakat, you had posted this in some of the discussions that we were having on HackMD about sort of some of the other parts of this project, right? About genetics and genetic determinism and so forth. And so maybe I'll just explain a little bit about where this project came from that I'm working on for KILL LAB. And then, you know, we can get into maybe talking about this desire sometimes within sort of scientific context, you find genetic bases for different types of minority identities and so forth. So basically, there was this article that I read last year, came out just last year, called "The Use of Whole Exome Sequencing in a Cohort of Transgender Individuals to Identify Rare Genetic Variants." And as a study, it was actually reasonably well done. It had trans people involved in it, you know, as part of the study authors and so forth. And the idea was to sort of do this thing called whole exome sequencing of one's genome. And so the exome is your part of your genetic code that actually codes for genes, right? And then there's all this other stuff called the introns, which are cut out of your sequences. So for example, you may have like a really long sequence of DNA. There's a whole bunch of introns in there that are just sort of useless stuff that gets cut out. And then what's left are the exons, which creates the exome, the whole set of all of the coding regions in the DNA called the exome. And so now there's sort of really rapid ways to do the sequencing. It only costs only a few hundred, you know, euros or something compared to tens of thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of euros or whatever, not too long ago. And so, you know, there's now been a whole bunch of research going on in terms of trying to look at the variation within the exome and within these exons, and using that sometimes to look at disease in terms of what might be causing disease, but also to just look at, are there any things that are associated with particular traits, right? So these are what's called genomic association studies. And so the idea is you have a control group, and then you have a group of people who, you know, have some particular trait or experience or something like that, or identity. I'm speaking from the scientific perspective right now, right? So you divide this up between kind of the control group and then a group that has some particular trait or identity or experience and so forth. Then do the sequencing of the exome, and then look for variations in the exome that only occur within that group that's not the control. And so they did this. They had 30 transgender people, both trans men and trans women. They didn't seem to have any non-binary people, and of course that'd be something to do in like some other study. Yeah, as Leia's like, oh yeah, I know, science sometimes is. This is why I'm not a scientist anymore. You know, and then they were able to find these variants, right? And so, you know, in a sense, what they found is there's no one variant in these exomes that would mark one as transgender, right? So this is not about trying to find a transgender gene, right? You know, a lot of scientists are way beyond that idea, right? They understand that things exist in a very complicated interrelationship that we don't even really fully understand. It was more like, okay, so within this cohort of 30 people, we found that these 40 variants only occurred within the transgender cohort and not others, right? And so I found this really interesting because I was like, okay, maybe this is a little bit more of a complicated way to think about this than trying to find the gay gene or the transgender gene like has been tried to have been done in the past. Right? But still, it's kind of problematic, of course, to sort of reduce it to genetics. So part of this project was about this tension between trying to understand, and this is part of my project in general, right? Trying to understand the tension between sort of material things in the body that, you know, perhaps are really related to experiences of transgenderness, whether it's hormones, whether it's something to do with these variants, or something of that sort. You know, something that happens biochemically, biomolecularly, you know, in that sense. And then this social representation, social construction of ourselves, right? And sort of this tension between the two. And so, you know, I've been sort of struggling with this in a lot of my projects and in this project too for lab. And then yesterday, this whole story for me got blown open. So I was talking with this researcher, Dr. Wong, who does things, he works in Taiwan, and he does this research on genetic variants. And so, you know, he was saying, well, maybe there's something interesting here. So he works in what he calls molecular anthropology. So this sort of a field where you sort of look at how these variants are distributed within populations in order to understand the relationships between populations over time. And we're talking going way back, right? Because you can do that. You can look thousands, tens of thousands of years back insofar as the genetic code keeps some information about different types of relationships between people, right? So then he was saying, and this is the part that blew my mind. He was saying, well, let's think about this, because maybe these variants, if these variants only exist in transgender, then maybe there was some sort of evolutionary, and I'm using evolutionarily in a very loose sense here, and I'll explain what I mean in this in a bit. Evolutionary or environmental situation that caused these variants to be selected for, let's say. And he said, well, what could that be? Maybe it was a society where people had all these abilities to express themselves in different types of sexual orientations, gender identities, and so forth, right? So what blew my mind is the idea that in the genetic code, we may actually have sort of markers of this history that we don't, that is lost to us, right?
Yes, that would be cool. That would be cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so to me, I almost started crying because, you know, that's often the issue, right? When we're having these arguments about representation and who are we and, oh, this is some sort of new thing, it's a fad. No, I'm going to say this on YouTube. Fuck you, you know, it's like, this is, you know, no, we've been around forever, and maybe this is some sort of evidence, you know. So I'm just totally sort of fascinated by this, and sort of blew open the whole project. I don't know. I'm curious what either you might think about this sort of wacky, sort of crazy thing. Kat, maybe you wanted to comment because you were talking a little bit about sort of social construction and genetics and so forth. Oh no, we just lost her. Uh-oh. Oh crap. Okay. I guess she'll be coming back shortly. Oh, there you are. Are you back?
Hi, are you still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, but I kind of understand your idea now, and I think I kind of understand your idea.
Oh no, we lost her again. All right, I'll just stamp here until. Oh, there you are. Yeah, Shuli is suggesting maybe. Imaket, yeah, you're breaking up a lot. Maybe do you want to sort of log back in here?
Okay. You hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, this is better. This is better. I think it's good now.
Okay. What I can say is that now I kind of understand your context now. So I think it's, and as I said, I think visibility is very vital, it's very political. Because if we stop appearing to the public, to all the spaces that we can go, right?
Sorry, you're still breaking up a bit. I was only able to get half of what you said there. So could you say that again?
So I think I kind of understand your context now. So I think the visibility, the issue of visibility is very vital and political, because if we stop appear in the society, and we will lose our boundary, we'll lose our space to go. And if we are not up to the society, we'll lose our right to use the gym, we'll lose our right to use the salon, and we'll lose our right to use the gym pool, the changing room, everything. So that is, yeah, I'm thinking, I kind of understand your idea. I kind of understand your idea now. And that is, yeah, that is very political. And that is why people will ask question. Oh, sorry, we don't have transgender before, so we don't know how to treat transgender before. That's why people will ask questions like this. Yeah. So I kind of understand your point now.
Yeah. Your thoughts?
So you were speaking to me?
Yeah, I was just curious if you had any. I was just curious if you had any thoughts about this idea or this question of genetics. And
yeah,
so forth.
I think it's wonderful that that we figure out something like that. That I think it's wonderful that a molecular anthropologist is actually existing. I think it's quite poetic. Still, I think the answer to our question is not to be answered. I mean, everything is not to be answered by biology. Far, far away from this, especially in the context of sex and gender, because I think this actually a lot of scientific data about human species and also like about animal world is very, it's seen through the the lens, the anthropomorphic lens of usually researcher are like masculine. I mean, for a very long time they were manly, and I mean you can feel that there's a strong resistance to any kind of proof that trans people are natural, are just like the fruit of the natural diversity, and not an abnormal thing, you know, some like there's some regularity, and then you have errors. Like, no, that's not like that. Like we are a part of the structurally, we are a part of a human being. Like, you like it or you don't like it. But they don't like it, especially because this proves of the presence of trans people in diverse culture and times is actually, you shouldn't need any other proof. Actually, you shouldn't need a proof on an ethical point of view to, you know, that's why the main answers to the question, to the cis question, why respect cis people, why respect it? Because I really respect your identity. What does it, who does tell me that it's true, that it's right? Well, we have to accept that, we have to let it go, and that we have to let people decide for themselves who they are. But this is such a taboo topic, because of course this is the point where the power is exerting on the body of people, controlling the way how people eat, have sex, you know. And the fact that the problematic of sex is for most of the part reduced to reproductive system and activities, and that nobody actually really understands. You know, I find quite fascinating when we are talking. I was looking at some biologists explaining sex reproduction, and she was explaining that it was estrogen, the molecules for the female molecules, you know, probably molecules with some dress and some high heels and maybe some lipstick, and then another molecule who is testosterone, and that is, and it's an aberration. It's completely, it's not true. It's just not true. You can't reduce to the reality to that, because it's completely scientifically not true. But it's a scientific who is talking, so it's like a kind of problem, you know, to say, hey guys, maybe here, you know, it's you have a kind of problem about that aspect, you know, of and I mean, there's a lot of self-reflexive work to do indeed before to be able to engage in any scientific work or research, you know. If you want to prove a completely fallacious thing, you can. It's always possible to make a study that prove your point, you know. So the study about genes is it's at the same time the potential for absolute potential for answering the distress of trans people, and really helping them implementing, showing who they are by and being who they are. But at the same time, you know, it's already the transgender identity is really, it's usually very transphobic, because we can't think outside of binary system. So even if we know we are not the sex assigned at birth, and we don't identify with that form, we still think in a kind of binary things, and we have to, because we have to exist in the social space. And you can't really exist in a social space if nobody recognizes the category under which you present yourself. So it's a huge problem. But I think that anyway, the proof that trans people exist should be enough for cis people to question their view about gender and sex, and it's not the case, and it has never been the case. And I think it's the only answer is because it's political.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't need to go to the G in order to prove ourselves, right? For me, it's just more poetic and everything. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the fact that we exist is exactly enough. Oh yeah, go on.
But I also want to share a story, since one of my friends, she heard about our plan to send a transgender gene to the radio, right? Transgender gene to the radio, and to try to cover the earth with transgender genes. And she feels very excited. She wants to get infected by the transgender gene. Yeah. So I think, I feel very, it made me feel very happy since everything. It made me feel that we are actually bringing some power to people outside of ourselves, other than ourselves. Yeah. That's a story I want to share to you.
That makes me feel really, really good. You know, I mean, because yeah, that sort of was the first initial idea of the project, right? That through this translation of these genetic variants into some sort of radio transmission that then bounces in between the ionosphere, then you're basically blanketing the entire Earth potentially with this information encoded as a radio wave, right? And that it infuses everything in a sense, which maybe a little bit megalomaniac.
And also they feel very excited to get infected by us.
You know, that's really interesting, because that question of infection, because I did this performance here at Kirsnikova, I guess about 2 months ago now, that was about my hormone replacement therapy and my patches, and then inviting people, because I've been collecting my used patches that have, that have been on my body, that may have a little bit of estrogen left on them. So I've been collecting them and saving them. And at the end of the performance, I gave them out to people and invited them to put it on their larynx, because it was also about voice training and so forth. But it really was also all of that also about this idea of contagion, as I was calling it. From this idea of like, oh, what, are you afraid of being, getting a little bit of this, right? Like, are you afraid of a little bit more estrogen? As again to sort of connect to this idea that, oh, if there's trans people around, oh, then other people might get infected by those ideas, and oh my goodness, maybe then we'll have more trans people, right? I mean, that's the argument that transphobes use about, kids wanting, different types of puberty blockers and so forth, right? That, oh my goodness, they're reading about this online, and oh, it's just this fad, and they're getting infected by these ideas, right? It's this weird idea that somehow the idea of being transgender is so enticing, in a sense, that everyone's going to want to do it. Which, that would be interesting to imagine a world where it was really desirable to be transgender, or to have this kind of play. I mean, that's science fiction, right? So I was thinking while you were talking also, Leah, about this difficulty about scientific research, and I think it goes directly back to how we started in the conversations about representation, right? And the fact that there aren't transgender people, non-binary people, different types of racial ethnic minorities within science, right? Or a very small percentage, which then shapes the types of questions that are allowed to be asked, right? And so again, I live in this in-between space where I was trained as a scientist, so I understand why a scientist will only ask questions within this way. Maybe the science needs to be changed, right?
Live streaming is on.
The scientific sort of way of thinking needs to be changed in order to sort of take into account all these other possibilities and options, right? Because otherwise we're getting a very, very limited view of the world, right? Because I'm curious, maybe Imacat, maybe we can talk a little bit about what you were doing with Wikipedia, right? Because that's also another space that has had problems with sort of representation of women or racial ethnic minorities and sort of the battles over edits and so forth on there. And also maybe free software, which also has a very similar issue.
Okay. Actually, I was invited, and do you know that there's a foundation after the behind the Wikipedia that's called Wikimedia Foundation, and we have a chapter here in Taiwan, and in 2013 the Wikimedia Taiwan chapter asked me to help them to organize the women in the Wikipedia. In fact, the Wikipedia editors they suffer from a very serious gender gap issue because only about 1/8 of the editors are women, and far less are LGBTQ. So as Wikipedia try to include all the knowledge, all the free knowledge in the world, they're actually suffering from the issue that they didn't get enough knowledge from the minor groups, like women, or like gay and lesbian, or of course transgender. So that's one of the goals of Wikipedia in 2013 to 2030, that they would like to encourage more inclusion and the coverage of their free knowledge to more people. So that's what we were doing. For me, I was trying to organize more women and try to offer. Sorry, where should we start? Where should I start? For me, when we start a room of Wiki Women's Own, you know, have you ever heard of the term a room of a woman's own? It's a Virginia Woolf. It's a famous saying from Virginia Woolf saying that if a woman want to write, she need to have money, and also she has to have a room of her own. So that's why we were thinking, if we want to get more women into writing, editing, contributing to Wikimedia, it's very important that we can create a space for them, a friendly space for them, and that's why when we started, we start by talking about what kind of space do everybody want, and then we try to. And I feel, and we try to make some drawings about your imagination of this room. So some people draw about cats, and some people draw about suns. So we try to buy some suns. No, just kidding. You can buy some suns. But then we try to create this room so that people can sit down and feel very free and safe and to write something. I think from that point, I start to think about the issue of friendly space. The idea of friendly space. What is a friendly space for a minority group? For example, the transgender. We need to feel safe. We need to feel easy. And this space, I think we need to get a lot of effort to create this space. And that's what Wikimedia Foundation is doing. And this I learned a lot from this, and I feel it's very important. If we want to create a space so that people can feel nice, and people will start attending. For example, as I said, we don't see many transgender women or transgender men. We don't see any transgender go to swim pool, because I suppose the number of people transgender went to swim pool is far less than the number of transgender in the society. And the reason is very clear, because we just thinking about it make us scared. We feel very scared to go to swim. We feel very scared to go to the nail salon, to go to a body salon, because we know that people will reject us, people will deny us. So it takes a lot of effort to make us. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort and resources, but that friendly space is very important to encourage more transgender, more women, more transgender, more gay and lesbian to enter to join the society, to join all kind of activities. And yeah, that's what we not only us, not only in Wikipedia, I think the whole world should start thinking about it and should start do something about it. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, I know certainly that there's these days where, you know, they try and have women create different types of Wikipedia articles, edit-a-thons and so forth. But again, you know, it's this question of what's the definition of women that's being, allowed in these types of edit-a-thons and so forth, right? But also I was curious to, Kat, if you had ever experienced or if you experienced any differences between the way you're advocating for things with Wikimedia versus free software community, and whether one was more open to these efforts than the other, or other sorts of challenges that were different between the two. Because, from my perspective as someone who programs and is somewhat on the edges of the free software community, and also somewhat on the edges of Wikimedia and Wikipedia stuff, I feel like there might be some overlap between the two, but also maybe some interesting differences.
I think, okay, although I just talk with you about the friendly space, but in the real time, it's still not enough. In the real world, the friendly space is still not enough. You see, actually, we're still suffering the issue from the issue that most of the Wikipedia editors Wikipedia editors or reviewers are mostly heterosexual male. And while they try to be fair to minor groups, but there are some cultural issues. For example, they are very used to to arguments. They are very used to argue. They are very used to arguments, to frameworks, to arguments with the keyboard. But that scares many LGBTQ. That scares many women. So that is a cultural differences. And I think at this point, so we still need a lot to do. For example, to fight the unfriendly atmosphere on the Wikipedia. But also but on the other hand, free software side, more and since about 2015 to now, in 2000, we already have some code of conduct in almost all kinds of society and free software communities, and requiring everyone to respect everyone. Everyone should respect everyone. Should not let other people feel offended. But sometimes I still feel now this. I think code of conduct is now an accepted standard for friendliness. But I think that is still not enough. One of the points that you can see that even we have code of conduct, we still have a very serious gender gap there. So the point is still, what else can we do? What else can we do other than the code of conduct? Could we devote more resources, for example, more money or more people on creating a friendly space for our minor group? Not just code of conduct. Code of conduct is just telling you not to, what you can do this, you can do that. But that is not. We should have a more active rules like what you should do and what you should do in a community meeting to encourage more people to make this space more welcome. What you should do to make this place more welcome. And to this point, I think we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go. And also we have another issue that, and I suppose it's 2018, something happened that a community leader was exposed that he's a heterosexual male, and he was exposed that he is on some SM site, some BDSM site, and he is treating, he has a slave on a BDSM site, and they still discuss about the BDSM other than not only on this side. They only share a lot of information outside of it. And this was exposed, and he get a lot of critics about, and there many women get very angry. But in the other hand, some people think that it's his freedom. He did not hurt the community directly, at least not directly hurt the community. So we have a problem here, that knowing that someone will hurt a minor group in this community, knowing that will stop people from attending. For example, if we have someone, we already know that someone is transphobia, even if he didn't do something to the community, even if he didn't do anything to the community, that will stop trans people from attending the community. Yeah. But on the other hand, that he really didn't do anything at all yet, at least not yet. So that is still an issue that people are, we are thinking about the balance between personal freedom and the value of respect. Yeah.
And I mean, if I'm understanding it correctly, the story as well. I mean, also the idea that there's nothing wrong with you being involved in BDSM, you know, if there's consent and everything of that sort that is done in sort of, you know, the way that BDSM should be done, right? That is sort of
yes.
Also it's another form of policing of sexuality, right? To sort of see from some global feminist perspective that BDSM is wrong, right? Which obviously there's some subsets of feminist thought that would say that, right? Rather than Oh, go on. Maybe I misunderstood.
I think that is sorry. I mean, I think I have to be clear now. I think the problem is not BDSM is wrong. The problem is that he took the BDSM thing out of the BDSM context to a real world, and that does scare us. Yeah, because that's not. Yeah, that does scare us. Yes, out of the BDSM context.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's the same situation that I'm thinking of that you're thinking of, but yeah, I mean, there's certainly been examples in free software communities that I've known of where usually it was a man was certainly treating women as if they had consented to BDSM acts but had not, right? And then this was a very sort of bad situation.
Yes.
Exactly. Leah, I was curious, since given sort of your experiences in filmmaking and everything, you know, whether there's similar sorts of codes of conduct on the sets or attempts to sort of expand the diversity of the sets of everyone who's behind the camera, especially, you know, given the fact that, you know, it's so hard to even find women directors of mainstream Hollywood, Bollywood, Hollywood level who are not men, you know, and then everyone else who's behind the set, from the cinematographers to the grips to everyone on. I'm just curious to hear some of your experiences or thoughts about that within the world of film.
Well, I think it's this problem of sexism, generally speaking, because this is basically sexism, this inequality in representation in some jobs. Well, it's still very pregnant, you know. I've discovered when I was transitioning and at the same time working in film industry here and in television industry, that I wanted to prove that I can that I'm still a camera operator after my transition, after my legal gender recognition. My colleagues had a lot of my colleagues had very different view about that, and it's made such a climate for me at work that the toll on my mental health was not worth the money I was earning. The last documentary I did professionally, I had to attack the director in justice because he refused to admit my identity and my pronouns and my names, and you know, it was he outed me on the set to other people who were not aware, and it's quite funny because I didn't know it. It's just like the main actors that didn't know me before and had no trouble to that point talking about me as a woman. And then suddenly, from one day to another, he made a lot of mistakes. He misgendered me like 1,000 times, and I came to him and asked, like, what the fuck, what was the, and oh, that's the director, you know, he told me about you, you know, and like I was so shocked, you know, and this is also on a legal point of view, it's not possible to make anything about that. So this kind of experience proved me that yeah, there's a lot, but I think that this aspect of this is a lot of it's a lot of sexism. It's not that much transphobia. I mean, of course, a lot of people are very transphobic and not comfortable being on the set with me, especially as film director or camera operator. When you have to direct other team crew, you know, the gender becomes very important. It can change the way completely how you how they obey you or not, respect you. They can make your work very hard or very easy. It's I mean, yes, I don't know. I don't think there's anything new under the sun, because there's still this idea in feminism that we have to, the female have to be equal in the way that they have to be equally represented as men, and then men just don't give a shit for respecting that. But actually, the problem is, I think that it's even before that. It's the thing is I think I just get caught in my thought, so I will have to break my sentence here. I just wanted to I think I talked enough about that. Because really, I think this is, I mean, there's a lot of things to say about the transphobic attitude of people in movie industry and also in the writing industry, you know, and but it's especially a problem also of who has the money to produce film, and in the end it comes always to the same old white cis dude who has the power and choose who will be represented and how. They are in control of what the public wants, because they know. And you know, and with these assumptions comes yeah, a lot of problem. I just wanted to react very quickly on the idea of Wikipedia and the work about that. I think it's so important, so crucial. I know in Transaxia we were also the first thing that has been mandated in this institute is creating a language in Slovenian for transness, a language that is not medicalized, a language that is, you know, a language that is somehow respectful of everyone, and the values that are under all of that. I think it's the trans feminism, and I think it's what transness has the best to offer feminism in this very intersectional understanding of the feminism, where you can include a lot of things. I think that this is, yeah, I just wanted to say that also about how the society define the woman, about the definition of the woman, and you were talking that the problem is then again, is it even possible to define like a woman? And then again we see that the scientific tendency is to find, it's very essentialist, is to find the essence of the people or things in a very a fixed and frozen moment in time, and all conditions are perfect. And this is a Platonic concept of things. It's very ideal, and I think that the definition of woman is impossible to reduce to the biological one, because it's such a performative thing. It's such a social thing. You cannot think gender out of the society. It's just, you cannot. Then there's no, because there's no also comparison, so yeah, I think that the real progress in society would be when we'll be able to scientifically responsible and ethically responsible, and that we will be able to make the change in society that are needed, because they are really needed in school, at first in school, and in the, especially in the I think, formation of scientific. So all the universities have to really make some updates about that, because it has to be included really in order to make change to society. I don't think that this is only happening by just telling we trans are one by one. We have to somehow be included and be accepted in your society. It's just that society has to make it inclusive on a systemic way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, maybe this is maybe a good place to end, although I wish we could get EMACAT on, hopefully. But also maybe at some point, perhaps this is a utopian thought, we don't define people based off of male or female anymore. You know, maybe that's just like a really outdated way of seeing things, and maybe we don't need those words anymore. And maybe perhaps we don't have to structure society based off of that. You know, we're not there yet, obviously, but maybe that's a desired future that we can work towards. Shoot, I was hoping that this would be the time that EMACAT would be able to make it on, so we could end this beautiful, amazing, really thought-provoking conversation with all of us digitally, virtually present here. Oh, yes, you're here. You're here. All right. So I was just going to be finishing up here because we're at 4:30 here and 11:30 there, and we had a great conversation. So thank you, Leah and the cat, for having this beautiful, thought-provoking, extensive conversation. And thanks, Julie, for organizing all of this in KILL LAB at LAB. I'm glad we could have met virtually, and maybe someday we will be done virtually and have other sorts of possible conversations. So maybe we'll just finish there. Thank you both. It was really delightful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.